Welcome to Do Beautiful Things. I'm your host, Jenny Lawson, President and CEO of Keep America Beautiful. In this podcast, we'll discuss ending litter, the truth behind recycling, and making communities beautiful for people and for a more sustainable future. We'll be talking to industry experts, community leaders, and everyday people who want to do the right thing, including from time to time, my mother. Thank you for joining us. I hope you learned something, and I know I will. Welcome back to Do Beautiful Things. I'm Jenny Lawson, and we are happy to have you here today. I'm looking forward to today's conversation, especially as I'm having the opportunity to talk with Keefe Harrison, the Recycling Partnership's CEO, in this next installment of what we've been calling the Recycling Reality Check. There's been a lot of noise lately around the state of recycling, with stories from PBS NewsHour and NPR questioning recycling as a little more than a PR stunt. So, we'll be diving into the latest research from TRP on the state of recycling, present and future, of residential recycling in the U.S. We'll explore the findings from their research published in January and try to answer the question of whether it's even worth it. That's a big question for us to kick off the conversation. So I welcome you, and I'm going to just let folks know a little bit about your background. So Keefe is the founder and CEO of the Recycling Partnership and a 25-year veteran in this space. She's fiercely committed to her organization's mission of delivering lasting change. Since 2014, the partnership has grown from an idea to a national movement that leverages more than $170 million of investment, partners with over 3,000 U.S. communities, and delivers more than 1 billion new pounds of recyclables, and they're just getting started. So Keefe, great to see you, and welcome to Do Beautiful Things.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here today.
So there's that big question. Is it worth it? Can we trust that recycling and taking the time to recycle makes any difference at all?
I think it's an important question, and I'm glad that everyone's asking it. I actually was just off for spring break last week and was visiting with family, and my aunts and uncles want to know the same thing. Is it worth my time? I think that comes back to the question of why do you come to work every day, Jenny? I bet you and I come to work every day because we want to see a better outcome. We're not comfortable with where we are right now. We as a country, we as a planet need to be doing more. So is recycling an effective tool of protecting natural resources? 100%. Is recycling something that everyday people in our country can do to participate in a greener tomorrow? Absolutely. Is it working the way that we want it to? No way. But I kind of draw a similar analogy to, when you are driving down the highway in your car and you start to hear a sound and a light comes on and, oh no, your tire pressure is down. And you pull over. You're not going to torch the car at that time. You're going to fix the tire and you're going to move on. Now, I think that's a good starting point for an analogy. But when it comes to recycling, I think we say, okay, but we're going to need some more in this vehicle. We really need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to recycle and that the stuff that they put in the bin, without a doubt, turns into new things, protecting natural resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's the trust that each of us seeks to maintain with the general public, is that when they put something in the bin, that you and I are working hard to make sure it does get turned into new things, and that we celebrate the progress that's being made on that side of the equation as well, right? The new products that are coming out and all of that. So between the two of us, I think we have a good representation and belief in the power of recycling to affect change, and the reality, perhaps, that it isn't working the way it should. And so where do we go from there? What is it that you all are working on that can help to move that trust barometer further into the trust category?
Well, I think this gets to the whole principle behind the recycling partnership. So as you said in the intro, I've been in this field for more than 25 years. That means I've driven trucks and loaded carts and hauled stuff and forklifts, and I've started on that side. I also worked on the granting side with the state of North Carolina, and then I worked on the private sector side and really got to see each sector along the way of this fascinating recycling process and sees, and that shift in perspective really showed me that we have such an opportunity for system change in this country. And that's why I started the Recycling Partnership. It's our 10th anniversary. And like you said in the intro, we were just an idea that we could do something different, that it's not just on the backs of the public to make this better. It's on the backs of the companies who are making the stuff to make sure that there is a real outcome. And that's the big principle behind the Recycling Partnership. And it's a concept that we call insist and assist. I did a TEDx talk on this idea that I think there need to be more nonprofits that are working with companies who make pledges to make things recyclable or make them greener, and to say, okay, we like that pledge. We want to insist that you deliver that. We want to help hold you accountable, but we also want to assist. So we're going to bring together the best data, transparent measurement, the strongest staff possible. And when you set to work on how you put your dollars behind those claims, we want to make sure that the public has a nonprofit partner to make sure that those claims are viable, trusted, and can really deliver. So the whole concept is an insist and assist corporate accountability model to make sure that more dollars are going into the communities across this country to build a better system.
So let's talk about the build a better system part. So, tell me what happens for our listeners after I throw a bottle into my recycling bin, or a prepackaged lunch that I picked up and that goes in the recycling bin. What is the infrastructure as it is now? Let's say, here in Connecticut or back in your home state in Carolina.
Yep. So what happens generally with recycling is that people have a big roll cart. We help give grants for, we're about to put our 2 millionth cart grant on the ground. That means that 2 million different households now have a big recycling cart that they didn't have before. So what happens then is we want people to put their stuff in. Remember, nice and loose in there. Don't bag it inside of plastic bags. That makes things challenging. And we want to see your cardboard box, your aluminum can, your steel can, your pizza boxes, your printed paper, all in that container. And what happens after the city comes and picks up your cart and empties it is it heads to a material recovery facility, a MRF. And that MRF is a factory that the whole purpose of it is to separate all the things you just worked hard to put into one container. Why that process? Well, it's easy for you. It's convenient for your garage. And then now we need to do the hard work of making sure that aluminum cans go to one place and all those bottles that you talked about go to another. So if we follow the track down you said on the bottle, then we start to see, okay, that MRF has loaded up a truck with these compressed bales of just plastic bottles on them. What happens then? They go to a recycling facility that grinds them up, washes them, and then it goes through a process of sorting different types of plastics. Jenny, I know you know this, but I always think when I'm talking to the public, it's cool to learn about things that like PET, the soda bottle stuff, sinks, whereas the cap flutes. And that's the mechanism with which they separate those two different types of plastics. And from there, can then make sure that those things to get to be recycled. Bottles can turn back into bottles, or carpeting, or polar fleece, or fill for pillows. And those caps can go back into packaging containers, but also auto parts and industrial processes. So when we talk to the public, they're really fascinated in this reincarnation that happens with recycling, and they'd like to know more about that. That's the transparency we're a hunger for transparency that we see when we hear either from the public or from the press that's just saying, like, look, guys, we all need this to work better. How do we know we can trust it? I think transparency, measurability is going to be the name of the game.
In the middle of the narrative, right? From the house to getting packaged on that truck as good recyclable material, where's it breaking down, right? Are there points at which it just isn't making the same, the promise is not fulfilled to the level that it could be?
So we just released a whole report on the state of residential recycling in the U.S. And the residential recycling rate for mixed recyclables in the U.S. is 21%.
So a lot of room there.
There's a lot of room there. That's a number that no one wants to see. So why isn't it happening? Well, first, I think we need, before we say, public, you need to do your part, we need to ask, can the public even do their part? Something like 38 million American families don't even have access to recycling. And we're not just talking about like one state that has a problem. This is spread across the entire geography. And sometimes there can be a real justice component of who does and does not have access to sustainability services, including recycling. So first, we have to make sure that everyone can have this opportunity. And then when you're going about problem solving on the country level, one, so making first they can, then two, ensuring that people understand what to do, the behavior portion of it. We know awareness is really high. 8 out of 10 Americans believe that recycling is important for the environment. But then, that moment when you're traveling or you're somewhere else and you walk up to a bin and you're like, oh, I'm holding this salad container. Is it a trash or recycling? So that moment of pause, that moment of, it's kind of an anxiety moment for people. It leads to one of two behaviors. Either one, wish cycling, right? People hope for the best and they throw it in. Or two, they get overwhelmed and they leave it out. And so we want to build some consistency for what's recyclable where across the country so that it doesn't have to be a guessing game of what happens at the bin. But to your question of where does it go? One, we have to ask the question of can people? Two, we ask the question of do people? And when we get to that do people conversation, we know that 3 out of 5 cardboard boxes don't end up in the recycling bin. 2/3 of mixed paper, something similar to that to PET bottles. That's where the human behavior part of it comes in, of really just making sure it ends up in the right bin. From there, once it heads to the recycling facility, very little of it gets lost from there. I think that's what people worry about is that they, once they've done their part, how do they know that the old thing turns into the new thing? But from our measurability, very little gets lost there. So I think, Jenny, your big question, and I know what your organization works on, it's similar to ours, is how can we really solve for a system that reflects we need a better U.S. system, but it also reflects that it has to connect to what happens in each and every town in this country. And it's the nuance of both.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And inherent in that is this effort to build that national understanding and uniformity so that when I move from Virginia to Connecticut, like I've done in the last few years, my understanding of what I need to do changes right along with it. It's consistent place to place, and that there is some general understanding. And that gets harder in rural communities. I can only imagine, right? There's not as much infrastructure even available in rural communities. Is that part of the problem?
That is part of the problem. But I think when we're trying to figure out how to make a system work better, we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? And is the way we got here the way we want to go forward? So the way we got to the U.S. recycling system that we have is that the public wanted it. Manufacturers look to recycling as an alternative feedstock. They can either mine things, cut them down, or they can look to recycling to make feedstock, to make new stuff. So we've got those end markets there, the old stuff to new stuff. We've got the public will, yes, I want this. But then the rest of the story of how did this current system come to play really has to do with local politics. There are 9,000 different recycling programs across this country, and they all meet different specs of, what the local budget can handle. And when city managers are trying to figure out between their schools and their police and their playgrounds and recycling, there are hard trade-offs that happen. So what the result of that is over the decades is we have lots of variability of what level of recycling, what's recyclable, how we talk about it. And it makes it hard for the everyday public to know how to engage. So that's how we got to where we are. We don't like that. We want to see a stronger system. So I think your listeners would be interested in 2 things that could help us get to that stronger system. One is in the short term, and that's a new tool that we developed called Recycle Check. This report we just released, it's connected to an AI-based database of 9,000 different recycling programs. With Recycle Check, we're trying to make that data free for anyone to know what can I recycle where. So Jenny, no matter wherever you travel in the US, because you're a good traveler, you'll know with Recycle Check what you can recycle in that zip code. So that's a really good short-term tool.
So Recycle Check, is that an app, or do they need to go to the Recycling Partnership website to download it?
Recyclecheck.org is a great place to find that. And instead of it just being an app that people have to download on their phone, we're instead trying to get it to everywhere they go for their information. So we're partnering with the How to Recycle label. We're partnering with Big Data. We're partnering with groups like yours. Anywhere anyone goes to get their information, we're trying to make that free and easy to be accessible. So I'm glad you stopped me there, recyclecheck.org.
And then, whenever it comes to a question of policy and local politics, people have power there too, don't they?
Oh, I just spoke at South by Southwest, and afterwards I got a bunch of questions of what do I do as a human? And I said, one, Recycle Check can help you know where. And two, use your voice with brands and companies to say, hey, I want to make sure that the stuff I'm buying isn't on me to figure out how to make it recyclable. I need you to design it for recycling, and I need you to make sure that I have a system. So use your voice with companies and use that same voice with policymakers. So that's the other big part of the solution, Jenny. We're working hard to see more producer responsibility policy passed in this country. So Maine, Oregon, Colorado, California, they've passed bills to say, companies, if you sell stuff here, we need you to pay into the pot to make sure that the stuff you sell can be recycled, reused, or reduced. It needs to have an outcome. We'd like to see that passed in more states or at the federal level. And that, Jenny, I think that is the exciting point where your listeners can really say, okay, then I can see that's not just me rolling this recyclable stone up a hill, but it's actually the level of system change that our country needs to be able to deliver solutions for me and everyone like me who we know want recycling to work better.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is the power of EPR, which is the shorthand for that extended producer responsibility, is that pathway to making sure business comes to the table in a way that can enhance and support what they're asking their consumer to do, which is to get that bottle, can, salad container back into the recycling stream as well, right? So the quality of the effort starts to balance itself out. And I know historically that's been a point of challenge here at Keep America Beautiful, is there's a misunderstanding that we only ask the public to do any work around litter and recycling. And you work, and so do we, at inviting business to the table and asking for their support to do their part now. And it's a little bit extending that at the state level and having states the ability to have participation from business in what they're trying to accomplish. And hopefully, I think some national effort that can move that along as well. And I know, most of the companies that we work with understand that as part of what the future looks like, right? So there's a lot, especially going back, as I said in the intro, to those PBS and those PBS NewsHour, NPR sort of stories about this really isn't working. And here's all these ancient documents where, businesses were questioning whether recycling was going to work. Doesn't mean that it can't work or doesn't work, right? And the past is not a predictor of the future in this case. I think we're starting to see a lot of new opportunities coming forward.
I think we've never embraced the size of the solution to match the size of the challenge. We've understood how big the waste problem is. We know that landfills create a lot of methane. Methane is really hard on the climate. We know that recycling can protect natural resources and keep those materials circular life after life, but it's always been hodgepodge together. So what would it take to just fix the U.S. system? We could do it. $17 billion of CapEx could make sure that everyone does, everyone does, and that old stuff turns into new things. $17 billion is a big number if it's on the taxpayers' back. But if it's on the companies who are making the things that we need, well, the landscape just changes. $17 billion is also the annual price tag to operate that whole system. So I'm very proud. At the beginning of this intro, you talked about $170+ million that we've leveraged, most of that from corporate entities. That's a great start. It is only a start. We are trying to solve a $17 billion problem. But the good news is we could do it, Jenny. We can put this all to work. We can make sure that system really works. We could do it in 5 years. We could put all that infrastructure on the ground in 5 years. And after that, we could go talk about something else because recycling would be working.
Wow. It's a great picture of the future. And I think you're the right person, and we're here to help to make that happen. We've got some big and exciting moments of urgency coming up that we'll be announcing later in the spring to get everyone engaged in this conversation. And hopefully we can take some of the enthusiasm into the next 2 years, right? America's got this 250th anniversary coming up in 2 short years, right? What could we accomplish then? What could we, in the next 2 years, can we start to show people that it really can work and it really does work when everybody gets involved?
You know, my husband is a bicentennial baby, and we were just talking about over the weekend, it was his birthday, and we were talking about what he wants to envision for his 50th birthday. So I'm going to go back to him with that, Jenny, and say, like, I've got the topper for your cake, my friend.
Well, we are excited for what's to come and looking forward to making some big announcements around that through the course of the spring and into early summer. And so we would love to have him and you on board. Let's see how he comes through that. Keefe, this has been a great conversation today. I think, ending there, is it worth it?
Yeah, it's worth it. But I encourage people to understand that they have a role to play in this, but I would make their first role using their voice with companies that they buy stuff from, using their voice with policymakers, saying, look, I need a better solution, that then they can do their part because it's been built around them.
Thank you. We'll end it there. I am grateful for the conversation today. Keefe Harrison, CEO of the Recycling Partnership. Thanks so much. Did you know that cigarette butts are the most littered item in America, yet they can be recycled? Let's team up to lower the statistics by getting involved in the Great American Cleanup. Visit KAB.org to learn how you can join a cleanup in your area and discover how you can send cigarette butts to TerraCycle for free recycling. For every pound recycled, $1 will be donated to Keep America Beautiful, helping us continue our mission of creating clean, recycled, green, and beautiful communities across the country. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for Do Beautiful Things, as we'll be talking more about the Great American Cleanup in upcoming episodes. Keefe, thank you again for being with us today. And for all of you, until next time, take care, stay informed, and let's keep doing beautiful things together. Look forward to seeing you next time.